Today we're delighted to have Jeff Sellers speaking about our Tennessee State Capitol. Jeff's Director of Education and Community Engagement at the Tennessee State Museum and the State Capitol. He's written a book about the Capitol, including images from archives and private collections, as well as stories about individuals who were important in its history. The book won an award of excellence this year from the Tennessee Association of Museums. I have my copy, and you can see how much I found really interesting. Anyway, here's Jeff.
Thank you, Sandra, and thank you all for coming out today and braving the weather. I hope we get a little break in the weather so we don't get wet on our return home. But boy, you can't complain about the rain coming in, can you? We've needed it. So, but no, I do want to thank y'all. I want to thank this organization. Thank Fort Negley and Tracy for hosting us. I haven't had the honor of speaking to this group before, but it is very much a pleasure to get to speak to y'all today. As Sandra said, my name is Jeff Sellers. I am the Director of Education at the State Museum and State Capitol. I have been in that job, or varying degrees of that job, for just over 20 years. I celebrated 20 years on September 1st at the State Museum. I cannot believe it's been that long, but it has been a wonderful ride. And in those 20 years, I have loved every moment of being able to share the history of our State Capitol building. I've been given tours for those 20 years. Some of my staff say that I give a Gilligan's Island tour. You guys know what a Gilligan's Island tour is? It's a 3-hour tour. So that's the warning for y'all today. I may have a 3-hour tour in me. So if I go long, Sandra, just come on up and turn the microphone off, and I'll know when to stop. But no, I do love the history of our State Capitol building. I love sharing it with everyone. Last year we published this book as a part of the Tennessee State Museum. And it is a photographic history. You all know, I'm sure, of the Arcadia books. The thing I love about it is it's got a lot more pictures than words. So it is an illustrated history of our Capitol building. And it has over 209 images in it. And when I first started this project, I said, I can't find, they require you to have 120. And I said, my goodness, 120 pictures, I don't know if I can find 120. Well, let me tell you, we could have had 3 or 4 volumes of this book put together after it was all said and done. There were over 500 of these images that I was able to choose from. I selected the most that I thought was the neatest and told the greatest spectrum of stories across this building and its people and who's been there and what all has happened in its years of service as our seat of government. So it was a wonderful, wonderful project, and it's put out by the Tennessee State Museum. I do not get any of the proceeds to this. All of it goes for our efforts and what we do at the Tennessee State Museum to preserve Tennessee history as well as the State Capitol. So that's my short, very intro advertisement for us today. And I'll be happy to take questions at the end, and we'll just kind of go on our own little tour. Don't worry, not a 3-hour Gilligan's Island tour, but we'll walk through the beauty and history of our building here. This is the chapter breakdown of the book here. It's mostly chronological, but also thematic. We take you through the design and construction, and then we just break out in chapter 2 as the Civil War years, simply because here we are at Fort Negley. The Civil War in the life of the Capitol was this one seminal moment, unlike any other moment of the life of our building and our city and state and nation. And it has wonderful photographs. If you think about it, this is the moment in time where the building is completed and photography is just coming online for people. And so this is a great time to park there. Also, we have the Capitol interiors. That's when we go inside. The Capitol grounds. restoration and preservation of our Capitol building, which has been an ongoing process really since its beginning. It's always undergone these eras of restoration and preservation. And frankly, y'all, that's why Tennessee has one of the oldest working state capitals. Our state decided that it would not tear down its historic capital, nor would we build a new, bigger, larger, fancier state capital. We would maintain ourselves in this beautiful Greek revival capital that we have here. And then the last is the Capitol neighborhood. And this is really a Nashville story because the Capitol building really transforms Nashville in a way that we don't quite realize that it did. I remember I used to drop my children off at daycare, my wife and I, at First Baptist down on Broadway. And I could remember seeing that Music City Center coming up and that huge conference center. I said, that's a game changer for our city. And it has been. Much like the Capitol building has been a game changer, or was a game changer in the 19th century. And then finally, this is not just an architecture building. It's not an office building. It's the people's building. It's our building. And this is where we go to make our laws, but to also represent us. We celebrate there. We mourn collectively there. And so this is our house. That's why I put this image on the cover here. This is the south-facing view of the Capitol building. Of course, you all know it. This is the War Memorial building right here on the side. But all of this is War Memorial Plaza with all of these people gathered here in front of the Capitol building. And that's what I really wanted to convey with this book. All right. Let's quickly go through design and construction of our Capitol here. Now, I'm sure this group knows who these two gentlemen here are for the most part, right? The Tennessee State Capitol really comes into form in 1843. That's because the Constitution of 1834 required Tennessee to name a permanent capital. Before that, it had floated all over the state, Knoxville, Murfreesboro, here in Nashville, and even buildings throughout the city of Nashville. Ultimately, though, that Constitution required us to finally name Nashville or a capital as the permanent address. 1843, that's done. Nashville is secured as that capital city, and the commission is put together by legislation put forth by our General Assembly. This man over here on the far left is a young 40-something-year-old Samuel Dold Morgan. I love this striking portrait. It's one you do not see very often. It's one that we obtained by at the State Museum, I guess probably 10 or 15 years ago. But love the cigar he's holding in his hand there. You can almost see it's kind of just smoke wafting off of it. He will be the longest-serving commissioner of the Capitol building's construction. He will serve throughout the project, and he will really become the heart and soul behind making sure everything is completed ultimately. This gentleman here we are very fortunate to have as the architect. His name is William Strickland, and he is an Eastern architect, very pronounced, very well known for his Greek revival style. The 1830s, 1840s, Greek revival is the premier architectural style, and this architect is the premier architect of that style. So we're quite fortunate. Some historians have pondered why such a prominent historian would come to the backwaters of America at the time, the West, to build his final crowning achievement, which he considered the Capitol to be. He will pass away in 1854 on the steps of the U.S. Post Office downtown. Not quite sure what happened, but it was very sudden. He slumped down, and within a couple of days, he passed away. In our modern kind of thought, we would maybe think that might be a heart attack or something along those lines that kind of took him out there. He had a request by the General Assembly to be buried in the wall of the Capitol, and they granted him that honor only 6 weeks after he had finished designing his tomb. there he is laid at the northeast corner of our Capitol. And then in 1880, not to be outdone, the building is long constructed, Mr. Morgan passes away, and he is ultimately entombed in the south wall. 1 year later, by the way, because the building was finished, and they had to deconstruct that south wall to knock a hole in the completed building and put Mr. Morgan there. One thing that I found in this research is that his funeral took place on Christmas Eve, 1881. It said, and that's strange enough, but then what's stranger is that the House and Senate were both in session on that day. They paused their session at noon to come down for his funeral and then went back upstairs and finished their business. I don't think they quite observed Christmas the way that we do today. In any event, both these gentlemen are on inside the walls of our Capitol today, and they remain there. I love this. I put this in the book because it shows you this is an 1856 map of Nashville from the memory of an intelligent person, it says, an intelligent resident at the time. So they are remembering back to 1804. And here, this is really what I want you to see, is that right there. See what that says? It says Cedar Knob. And some of you may remember before it was Martin Luther King Boulevard that goes by the Capitol building. It was then, before that it was Charlotte Avenue. Before that it was Cedar Street. And that's because of this, the tallest hill in town, downtown, was covered in cedar trees. And this one wooden story house there. Ultimately, that will become Judge George Washington Campbell's house, and that's who will sell this hilltop to the state of Tennessee for to the city of Nashville for $30,000 to be given to the state of Tennessee for the purpose of building our Capitol. From the outset, from the very outset, this project was meant to be cost-saving. And so much so that the name of the commission and the name of the legislation to build the Capitol was the type of labor that would be used on the Capitol. Now, in the 1840s and 1850s, when I'm giving a tour, most people go, when they think about labor and forced labor in the South in the 1840s, your mind goes to enslaved labor, correct? And of course, that does take place on our Capitol, in our Capitol building. But by the most part, the majority of the forced labor that takes place will be from this building. This is the state penitentiary. And those incarcerated in the state penitentiary will be enlisted to work in the quarries, which were about a mile away from here, or from the Capitol building to the west of the Capitol, right off of Charlotte Avenue. That's where this was located, and it was very close, and you could actually, inside the yard here, they would have polished the stone and shaped the stone into blocks worth building there. Let's talk a little bit about the enslaved laborers that worked on the Capitol building. A man by the name of A.G. Payne comes up in the records, and he is a slave owner who is hiring out his enslaved workers for various jobs. He has a brick foundry. He is very much at least some of his work has to do with construction and masonry, and he will hire out. It's very difficult to see who is enslaved and who is not sometimes in these hired invoices, but at least around 40 people will be hired out. Initially, though, to excavate the knob of our Capitol Hill, to flatten it so that you can now build the foundation, there were 15 enslaved men and one enslaved woman who were on top of Cedar Knob to excavate out of that limestone. And as you might imagine, They're doing it with crowbars and sledgehammers and wheelbarrows, very much manual, hard labor on top of that. Why didn't they use incarcerated laborers? Well, the penitentiary director basically says you can't have these guys outside in the town. You're going to have them in the quarry or in the penitentiary, and so for that reason they used enslaved labor on top of Capitol Hill to build its foundation. This is really one of the first images of our Capitol, 1846. Before the building was ever completed, this would have been what the commissioners saw to say, okay, this is what this beautiful building is going to one day look like. After all, it was projected to cost the taxpayers $300,000 in the 1840s. So you wanted to have this beautiful rendering here that Strickland had this commissioned by a Philadelphia lithographer to kind of say, here's the dream. This is where we're going. And he did a pretty good job. All right. Now, are you familiar with where this vantage point is taken?
North Nashville.
Yeah, this is North Nashville. This is Germantown area. On top of a roof of a building, facing back. There's the Church of the Assumption right there. And then there you have the Capitol. I put this in the book because it shows you what a landmark this building was. It dwarfs every other building in our city. Today, the poor building is dwarfed by all the other glass skyscrapers out there. But this, you could have seen this building east, south, north, west, anywhere for miles and miles around. Our tower, you can't talk about the Capitol building without understanding its distinctive tower. It is patterned off of this monument, and it is a monument to Lysicrates that was given as an award during the Dionysus tournaments for choirs. By choral, we mean choirs, singing. And it was given to the choral lead, Lysicrates here, and this is still in Athens today. When Strickland traveled to Greece, he saw this and loved it and began patterning it off of, used it in his Merchants Exchange building in 1834, and then our Capitol building here in 1845 when it was begun. Now, incidentally, this is your trivia for all those folks when you go home asking about the tower. Strickland never did see this building complete, or this tower completed, executed. He died in 1854. This tower will begin the final phase of construction in 1855, and his son, Francis, will complete the superintendency of this tower here. Oh, this is a choral monument. So we shouldn't let it be lost that Strickland was really the first one to coin Music City, USA, because he has a choral award, a music award here. Tell the kids, this is like a Grammy on top of our Capitol building, or for us, a CMA. The Civil War years. Before we get to the occupied Nashville during the Union occupation of the city, we must talk about the Confederate 20. It was on the Confederate $20 bill. This is another lithograph done in the late 1850s, around 1856. But when the Confederacy seceded from the Union, they put 3 Capitol buildings onto its money. This is one of those Capitol buildings, and the state Capitol here. The reason for this is they would have wanted to show that the Capitol, or this newly seceded nation, was sophisticated enough to have these beautiful modern buildings in it. Unfortunately for them, though, the Nashvillians who were here at the time never did use this money because it did not get issued until 1864, and as you know, Nashville was occupied by 1862. So It never really made its way into Nashville until after the war. Here we have probably the most iconic image of the state capitol. It is from 1864, and this is the George Barnard photo that's been taken in the summer of '64. Barnard was a Federal Army commissioned photographer who was traveling throughout the South to document federal installations throughout. And he will travel with Sherman all the way down and take photographs through the Sherman's March to the Sea and the Atlanta campaign. But he starts here in Nashville and takes this photograph here. This is Martin Luther King Boulevard today, Charlotte Avenue, as you know. This is will become the main entrance, and notice the tents that are out there. Very much an occupied Fort Andrew Johnson, as it was called at the time. Love this photograph. This is the East Portico. Has a lone sentinel here, standing picket, with cannons faced towards East Nashville, across the river there. This is, anybody know what that building this is? Of course, this is the Downtown Presbyterian, at the time known as the First Presbyterian, right? Also a Strickland design building. I tell people the most important thing that ever happened there was my wife and I got married there. So at least that's the most important thing to us. So here you have the Maxwell House Hotel. It just shows you what Nashville looked like during the Civil War. Beautiful statues here. These are Wood and Perot out of Philadelphia statues. We'll see more. Yeah, here we go. These are morning, noon, and night statues that were purchased in 1857 and installed there. They were never really completely taken well at the time. Even a legislator tried to have them removed as soon as they were installed. Why? A little too risque there. And during the restoration, we'll talk more about those in a minute as to what happened to those. Here's the public square. There's the courthouse, also designed by Francis Strickland. And here is the farmer's market, the two twin buildings of the farmer's market, with a shed that would have gone between the two buildings of the farmer's market. All right, let's go inside. Take a look at this. This is the beautiful Grand Gasolier that was installed. This is a Cornelius from a firm in Philadelphia that installed this beautiful gasolier, 48 burner. I say gasolier because it would have burned natural gas instead of electric light, of course. And just an absolute marvel. Even the Philadelphia newspapers commented when this thing shipped out on a steamboat to Nashville. It was so grand of a gasolier. And had beautiful corn stalks weaving through it. It had cotton blossoms in it. It had tobacco leaves coming off of it. It had Native American men figurines in it. And it had a ring of bison, American bison, ringing around it as well. Just so Victorian through and through, right? So what happened to it? Well, in around late 1880s, you see this thing's here. The Memphis delegation was supposed to have been sitting around here, and they, at the time, you would open the windows up to catch a breeze for the hot summer sessions. When you do that, that big thing begins to sway back and forth. Yeah. They said, well, okay, Memphis proposed a bill to take it down, and it was a bipartisan vote that agreed to inspect it to see if it was needed to come down. It really didn't need to come down because it took them 2 days to dismantle this thing. It was not in any shape or form in jeopardy of falling. But they took it down, and of course, every legislator had to have its own piece. Every government official, I'll take that buffalo, I'll take that cornstalk. and it just was dismantled to the winds. This is the house chamber with the beautiful rostrum, which is still there today. Another view of the house. This is 1909. Notice the gasolier is gone. And now notice what they have done to put light back into this room. Can anybody see it? Little string lights. Got little Christmas lights around the perimeter of the ceiling there. Electric lighting. The Capitol was one of the first buildings to be electrified in Nashville. 1909, this is an all-male assembly. Women are on their way to coming in, but they still have about 11 years to gain the right to vote. So, all male, every desk, if you look closely enough, is outfitted with a spittoon. Hope they're good shots. Here is the Senate chamber. Beautiful oak desks here, beautiful sofas. These are all original from the 1850s. These 8-day clocks are also, these marble clocks are also part of the original purchase. This room looks very similar to what it does now, including the spear and shield motifs along the public gallery. But what I want you to look at is the gasolier in this room. It's still there. There are no globes, gas lamp globes, but look at that. If you can see that, that's one tiny little light bulb hanging down from this grand Victorian gasolier here. But that was the era of the day. So this photo comes to us of about 1890s. First floor hallway, you're looking at the sort of the longitudinal hallway. The transverse is over there in the center. And I think this comes to us around where the governor's office would be on the right here. But the thing I love about this photo, if you could see it better from what we have here, again, look at what's in the center here, spittoons. It says, please do not spit on the floor or the steps. All right, those steps are made of stone, so you can imagine tobacco spit and all the people that slipped on someone who was not very careful on spitting on the spittoons. Now we're moving forward a little bit in time. I love this photograph. It's just a beautiful photo of the grandness of our house chamber. Now notice they've got some more chandeliers, electrified chandeliers here. This comes to us from 1954, and it's a very intentional photograph. They're sending this to the Disney Corporation. What do you think they might be doing with the Disney? That's right. Fess Parker. Yep, Fess Parker, the Davy Crockett movie, The King of the Wild Frontier, was filmed partly here in Nashville, but also filmed in the Capitol building. The U.S. Capitol building, if you go back and watch that movie, they're supposed to be at the U.S. Capitol while Crockett is in Congress, but it's a great, great view of our interior Capitol in 1954, 55. Yes, the little shots all over town throughout that filming. All right, let's move quickly through the Capitol grounds. We'll take a stroll through the grounds. This is what they looked like in the 1870s. Beautiful southeast entrance, very little trees to be grown here. Thousands and thousands of cartloads of dirt were moved into Capitol Hill so that they could have enough soil to plant. Remember, it's cedar knob. You guys know how cedars grow. Around here it's flat, very thin soil, and then what do you have right under that base layer of soil? Limestone. And that's what this place is. It's a limestone knob. So there's not much great soil for which to nourish trees. Now today, trees are doing well out there, but it's not always the case. People plant memorial trees out there all the time, and they just don't want to take too well. Here they planted cedar trees because they knew it was a cedar knob to begin with. Here, 10 years later, you see the cedar trees growing up quickly. This is probably my favorite photo of the Capitol building, though. Take a look. Number one, it's just crisp and clear. Very well done.
People on the roof,
What's that?
people on the roof.
Absolutely. This is what we say before. This is Nashville before OSHA. That was a part of our lives. So you could go all the way to the top and hang off and sit on there. Thank goodness that we do have those restrictions, because this is very, very dangerous. They're even, y'all. Look at this. This is not as bad as this right here, because this is about a foot of ledge right there that they're standing on. What are they doing here? Look at this. That's the Andrew Jackson equestrian statue in the East Garden that's still there today. You know this statue from Jackson Square, from Lafayette Park. You know it in Washington, in New Orleans, here in Nashville. This is the unveiling. And inside, it's almost like a clamshell of curtains. You had militia soldiers inside, and at the countdown, they unveiled it by dropping their half of their curtain and unveiling the beautiful statue, Clark Mills statue there. Love that photo. The next biggest moment in the life of the Capitol probably looked similar, if not greater, than what you just saw, was the day that they had the funeral for President James K. Polk and First Lady Sarah Polk in September of 1893, when they removed the President and First Lady from Polk Place off of 7th Avenue and brought them in an honorary funeral parade here to Capitol Hill. And that's where they remain, resting in the East Lawn today. Anybody know who this lady is? That's right. That's Eleanor Roosevelt herself, paying a tribute and honor to the President and First Lady in 1934, as she and her husband are on their way to Warm Springs, Georgia.
They spoke at Fisk and at the DuPont.
He spoke at, he went to the Hermitage and then went off to inspect the building of Norris Dam that was happening at the time.
And DuPont too.
Yeah, and then they weren't here very long, but she did not go with him to the Hermitage. She stayed here and did this little ceremony.
When did the fence go up?
The fence? I'm not sure when the fence went up. That's a good question. Yes, sure is. This is one of my favorite monuments in the park, in the Capitol grounds, and it's of Alvin C. York, put up in 1968. This is Gracie, his wife, looking on at her husband after he passed away in 1964. The General Assembly donated or appropriated $30,000 for this statue. This is the sculptor named Felix de Weldon. Any Marines in this group here? No Marines? Well, you probably know his work better as the Marine Corps Memorial outside of Arlington Cemetery in Washington, D.C., with the flag going up on Iwo Jima. So that's his handiwork. Here we have the Capitol building during the 1930s, and you can see it's in rough condition, very stained. There's weathering happening all throughout. Look at the columns there. They said that there was chunks of limestone that could fall from these great heights of the building and fall potentially on people walking around the Capitol. So it was very necessary that we do a major restoration project. Of course, World War II took place. By the 1950s, it becomes time to really do that. They do that. They appropriate the funds in the 50s. Governor Frank Clement will oversee this along with Governor Ellington, and a huge restoration will take place. The finial comes off the tower. This gives you a comparison of how big that finial is. There's our CMA. This is what happened to morning, noon, and night. Everything was meticulously, really well reproduced or rehabilitated or restored, except for morning, noon, and night. And they were thrown in the junk heap and taken out to the landfill. And there they rest to this day. That's one of the big things in Nashville history is like that people lament is that these were cast out. Motlow Tunnel is also put in 1959. Huge derrick going up. They're putting the finial back on top there in this photograph, but notice also the columns are all removed. Everything, mostly, the majority of the stonework on the outside is new stone from this era, from the 1950s era, and it's Indiana limestone. And do I have anybody from Indiana here? Am I going to offend anybody? Okay. Indianans love the fact that they have construction grade limestone. And they let you know whenever they're there, oh yeah, I bet it's Indiana limestone. And yes, it is. This local limestone is not construction grade. There you have the 1960s finished product. And I love this image just because it shows you, if you go to the Capitol today, this is kind of what you're going to see. We're still living off of this same kind of renovation, restoration here. All except for Motlow's changed. Lastly, 2 more chapters to go, just a few more. I'm going to park here because you all love Nashville history. Just take a second to look at this photograph. It's never been published before, to my knowledge. It's taken from the roof of the State Capitol building. This is Charlotte Avenue, today's MLK. This is 7th Avenue. And it shows you the sweeping view of Nashville circa mid-1890s. You can literally walk and see these huge Victorian houses here. Just take your eye through this. This is even before the Hermitage Hotel is put up. So you see these giant Victorian mansions all throughout. This is, by the way, is the George Washington Campbell House. After he sold his property on Capitol Hill, he dismantled it brick by brick and put it up there on the Capitol, across the street from the Capitol. This is that same area here now with Capitol Boulevard. And War Memorial Building, which we should recognize as being the 100th anniversary. I believe it was yesterday. 100 years ago, yesterday, this beautiful building opened its doors up. Really, y'all, this is that era where the Capitol is saved from being torn down and another one built because the legislature began to move out of the building through these giant buildings and construct the John Sevier State Office Building, the State Supreme Court Building, the War Memorial Building, the Cordell Hull Building. All of those are featured in the book. Just west of the Capitol was this area, very poor area, predominantly African-American area that dates back to the Civil War. This is one of the sadder stories here because this neighborhood, this black neighborhood, was here. They took refuge during the Civil War in the shadow of our state capitol building for safety. And it becomes really one of the first neighborhoods, the black neighborhoods in the city of Nashville. And here you see more images of that. But one of the first major sort of redevelopment projects in the federally funded, it was the first federally funded redevelopment projects in the country happened here on these grounds in the 1950s. And this is when that project takes place. This is the before, 1953. Virtually the same vantage point, 1960. The People's House. I said this is where the theme is, where we come to celebrate, we come to mourn. This is the funeral of Governor William B. Bate in 1905. This is one of my favorite stories here. So we have this, look at this. This is a Ford runabout. sort of Model T. And for weeks, he put in the Nashville newspapers, this car dealer, that his runabouts were strong enough to go up the hill and up the steps of the state capitol building, and to come out on this day in August and check it out. Now, this shows you how little entertainment they had in Nashville. Because look, the entire city comes out to see this. And the story goes here, this photo is captured midway up. And that, yes, he rattles it up. You see he's on the back here. It kept kind of wanting to tip up, so he's having to stabilize with his weight the car as it traverses and sputters up the steps. About this portion of it, it stalls out and it overheats, and the radiator's just hissing and steam is coming out. So he takes and gets water and reloads it and cools it off and fans it a little bit, cranks it back up, and it once again starts to cough and sputter, and there it goes, and it makes its way all. They open the door to the first floor, and the runabout runs through, rambling through the first floor hallway, and they open the back door, and it runs down the back steps of the Capitol building. But it's also a place where you can really kind of put yourself out there and show yourself. Here's a beautiful holiday scene. First evidence I saw of a Christmas tree at the Capitol was 1907. So this tradition is still ongoing year in, year out during the holidays. People's House, I put Ben Johnson in there. I love this guy. Found him in the records. He worked, y'all, from about 1900 to the mid-1950s, about 55 years working as a porter at the Capitol building. And they said you could literally set your watch by his raising of the American flag and Tennessee flag on the Capitol Tower every single day. The kids would know they had to get to school because the flag was going up on the Capitol building. Ben Johnson climbed those 190 steps day in, day out, every single day with very little time off. So we wanted to honor him in the book as well. I call this photo, the king was in the building. Elvis was in the building. This is, of course, Elvis here. The governor's office, this is Governor Buford Ellington, and he was here for Elvis Day on the Hill. The Memphis delegation honored him in 1958, I think, for his contributions he had given the state of Tennessee and its music. And so he addressed it, said this was the greatest honor he had ever achieved. So that was early in his career. This is Ann Ellington, Governor Buford Ellington's daughter. Elvis kind of took a shine to Ann, and he asked her to accompany him up to when he gave his speech in the House chamber because he was nervous to give the speech and he needed someone his own age to accompany him. And so she did. He invited her back to his studio the next week to listen to him film or record his next album. They had a date. They went back to the governor's mansion, and this is all in the records. I'm not telling anything out of school here, but that he stayed a little too long, and the governor told his security team that it's time for the hound dog to go ahead and leave. And so he did. He politely left, and that was kind of the end of that. But this is a great photo that just shows you again that the kids, it's all about us. The building is our building to gather, to learn, and to celebrate our government and what it does for us. So that's a quick story. You didn't get the Gilligan's Island tour, but I hope you have enjoyed this tour of the state capitol, and I appreciate it and welcome any questions. Yes.
I remember there used to be a councilwoman who tried to keep them from building anything higher than the Capitol until Tennessee Tower.
Yeah. There's a beautiful, a wonderful image, and the same time the restoration is happening of the L&C Tower going up at the same time that restoration is happening. So it's really, it's really cool to see. That was the big one that kind of began to dwarf the Capitol, right?
You didn't mention Governor Andrew Johnson, 1853. He was the one who built the Capitol, it was his project.
Governor Andrew Johnson, the question was, he was the one who helped build the Capitol, yeah.
It was really his project, wasn't it?
Well, Lean Jimmy Johnson, Lean Jimmy, who was not Andrew Johnson, but Lean Jimmy was a Whig candidate. He opposed James K. Polk and beat James K. Polk as the gubernatorial candidate. And that's why James K. Polk wasn't really doing anything and became the president, the dark horse candidate to win. Yes, Lean Jimmy, he was very tall and skinny, hence the Lean Jimmy, and was very gregarious governor. Now, Andrew Johnson was the first governor to actually preside in the Capitol building, and he will come back as military governor during the Civil War. Yes?
What's the work going on the tower now? I see the scaffolding.
Oh, yeah, great question. Thank you for bringing it up. I was going to put some slides in for our current restoration. If you drive by the Capitol today, you will see scaffolding all around the Capitol building. And it's just undergoing more kind of cleaning and no major stonework happening this time, but they're also removing the old windows and putting state-of-the-art windows in that are climate controlled and that don't leak as easily. And so really the project happening up there right now is the windows project. So yeah, it's exciting though. They're taking the panes back to their original panes, which for people like, us, we kind of geek out on making sure yes, even the panes are the how they looked in the 1850s. So yeah, yes.
Are there any tours of the state capitol now? Can you tour the building?
Oh yeah, my staff is there right now. Next tour goes off at 2:00, and they're free. So you do not have to have a schedule or a reservation. You can just show up, and we'll be happy to show you around. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
In the 1970s, my husband and I moved here, and our children were grade school age, and I believe that it was Ford who decided to recapitulate driving an old Ford up the Capitol steps, and they hired all kinds of people to come and be a part of the commercial and so on.
Oh yeah.
It got to be 6 or 7 o'clock at night, and they still were not successful in getting the car to go up the stairs. And my son had told the people who were doing it, being a loudmouth 11-year-old, that they should just run it, back it down the stairs and then run the film backwards. At 7 or 7:30 in the evening, that's exactly what they did.
Wow, that's great. That's a great story. I've never heard that one. There's all kinds of fun stories like that. The weirdest one is, and so much that some people didn't believe it, but there was a photo in the 1950s during the David Crockett craze when you had the coonskin caps. The tower actually wore a coonskin cap.
That was
They-
the orders of Estes Kefauver.
Yeah, and Estes Kefauver, at his height, he adopted the coonskin as well. Yes.
Morgan and Strickland still having a fight?
Are Morgan and Strickland still having a fight? Well, I can't say that they are. Now, last Halloween, I led a little ghost tour of some of the staffers who've been there. And I've been at the Capitol in the wee hours of the night, and I'd never seen anything. That's because my wife says I don't have the shining, so I'm not able to. But now here's the thing I will say about Morgan and Strickland fighting. That's kind of a misnomer because Morgan liked Strickland, and he loved his design. And if anyone fought for Strickland's design when the cost of building was going high, it was Morgan. So I think that's a convenient thing. I mean, all projects you get into some tough times and things, but you have to have someone to fight for your vision, and especially when Strickland died, Morgan fought to maintain that vision.
Jeff, can you tell us a little bit about the
The what?
Other parts of the Capitol complex, the Supreme Court building, Cordell Hall.
Sure.
buildings, Are those available?
Yeah. You know, it was those buildings, and I should say another interesting, fascinating story. It's in the book. I didn't put it in this one. Is the Capitol Association. This is a group of women who organized themselves to purchase land around the Capitol. By the early 1900s, most of those mansions were vacated. They had moved out to, you know, East Nashville or Sylvan Park or wherever, and most of those mansions were dilapidated and falling down. Rather than having developers come in, like we know so much today, and buy that land and then build something huge on top of it, they purchased it with the foresight to say, we're going to grab this land while we can. And they did. They held it, and then incrementally they sold it back to the state when the state needed it. That happened with the Supreme Court building in 1936 and 37. It happened with the John Sevier State Office building. And of course, the War Memorial was already built in 1925. But those key buildings kept the Capitol to maintain its historical integrity. I feel like that was a key time, and they did. You can tour. I encourage you, go to the Supreme Court. It's a public building. You can walk in there and walk and see that beautiful 1930s Depression-era building today. And the State Office building. And Cordell Hall was just a masterwork of preservation in the mid-2000 teens. Yes? The Carmack statue? Yeah, so the Carmack statue it's in the collection of the State Museum. Yeah, you may remember it came down in 2020, and it was damaged during that time, and so it's still damaged. It needs a pretty extensive amount of conservation work to be done to it. It's just a matter of money. Yes?
What's going on in front of the War Memorial building right now?
War Memorial? Yeah, another great question. I was going to put the most exciting, this is probably the most exciting era since the 1980s and 90s restoration, but we're completely redoing the War Memorial Plaza. You remember how the Legislative Plaza had all of the committee rooms and stuff underneath War Memorial Plaza, called it Legislative Plaza? All of that is going to be remade into a new facility for the state. It's going to have conference rooms, a conference center. Most importantly for us, it's going to have a Capitol Visitor Center with a lot of these images in it, and it's going to have the new military museum for the veterans. Remember, it was on the side of the War Memorial for so long? Well, the veterans are now going to have their own museum in that area there. We're working with design firms right now to get that done by 27. It's exciting. Yes?
Because I've read the book, I didn't realize that Pereira Mims' statue of the founders was originally proposed for the Capitol grounds,
Yeah.
but they didn't like the design. The design was, the picture in the book was very abstract.
Yeah. That was a story that I had never heard before, didn't know anything about, and I stumbled upon it. And y'all know the Pereira Mims statue of Donaldson and Robertson at Fort Nashboro today, right? That was originally meant to go on the north slope of the Capitol building. And he had done maquettes of the two statues, and they put them up. And it's in the book. You can see the photos. They put them up just to see what it would look like there on the north slope. State officials did not like it. They balked at it, and finally Mims, I think, worked something out with the city, and that's what. But honestly, I didn't know that story, and that's where they ended up going down on.
Statues are all around the Cordell Hall building.
Yeah.
What didn't they like about it?
I don't know. But the maquettes were not. They don't look like the ones that he finalized. I think that's what he said. Is that this is not the real thing, So. Yes, ma'am.
Are the Pope graves there to stay down, no more controversy about moving them to Columbia?
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
Are the Pope graves permanently there now?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Controversy of moving them.
Yeah, that controversy is over, I think, and I think that the Polk tomb and First Lady and President will stay there. Hey,
Yeah,
good to see you, Tom.
two questions. Is it knowing what statue or what the Carmack statue was? And then are there tunnels connecting any of the other buildings from the capital?
What was the first one on Carmack?
Yes, what will go there next?
What will go there next? Yes. So the state is working towards, Capitol Commission is working towards, very exciting, a statue about David Crockett, Tennessee's, frontier son will, I believe, once that's a part rolled into this larger War Memorial Plaza project. Motlow Tunnel, if you go by there today, it's completely gutted. Because it just leaks so badly, so they're rebuilding that there. So, and it will, I think, go on top of that. But all of that is decided upon by the Capitol Commission itself. Yeah.
And Jeff, also on part of this question, was there ever a secret tunnel under the Capitol that allowed Johnson, who was in charge of the Capitol during the Civil War, to sneak out of the Capitol? Have you ever seen any evidence of that?
That continues. Now, I'm not saying it's the Johnson Tunnel where he could sneak out, but there is a photo in the book where in that 1950s restoration, they hit a tunnel.
I've seen that picture.
Yes, you've seen it. It's just,
You know what side of the Capitol it's on?
I think it's the northeast side, but and so I went. Many of y'all know Jim Hubler, who was sort of a mentor of mine for many years. I went and said, what the heck is this, Jim? Is this the tunnel? Is this a tunnel? He couldn't figure it out, and his best guess, and I think it's probably is an air intake tunnel for the pump house. They used to heat and cool that building. You'd have a steam pump house that would pump that hot air into the building, and perhaps that's it.
One other question was, there ever evidence of a cornerstone being there? I've read that there was a cornerstone celebration when you started the Capitol. But I just wonder, where is the cornerstone? Was it under the platforms that they placed around the Capitol, the kind of Acropolis things they did? Or
Yeah.
what? You ever seen a picture
Well,
of
you
that?
could probably explain this better to us in terms of when an architect or when they decide on where that goes. That's a great question, and it's still a mystery as well. My best guess is the cornerstone was laid in the northeast corner, not of the finished northeast where William Strickland is buried, but the northeast corner of the tower. That tower rises up from the foundation. All right, it is like the building is built around that tower. The four columns of that tower rise up from the very limestone base of the building all the way to the top. And so I think the cornerstone is laid on the northeast corner of that tower, making a very central kind of area.
So it would be under G level, right?
Yeah, right under G level. But yeah, it's still there. It was a huge ceremony. William Strickland was there. Another time in which the whole crowd was on top of the hill and
Did you see a
celebrating.
picture of it or anything?
No, nothing. 1845.
Thank you.
All right, yes. One more.
There is a new tunnel between the Cornell Hall building and.
That's right. Yes, it is. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, they put a new tunnel in, I think, probably sometime in the mid-2010s. You could feel the building shock every time they set off a dynamite charge under there. Yeah, very long tunnel. Oh, yes. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. There are books for sale outside, and I'll be happy to sign them for you if you get them.